there, and welcome back to Smart Consulting Sourcing, the podcast that helps you get more bang for your consulting buck. I'm Helene, and every week we explore how to make smarter decisions when it comes to buying, managing, and optimizing consulting needs. Now, today's episode is one I've been itching to talk about because, let's be honest, it's the kind of decision that gets made all the time, and yet so often it's based on gut feeling, habit, or inertia. Yeah, we're talking about the classic question, should you make or should you buy? And no, this isn't about whether you should bake your own sourdough or order takeout tonight. This is about something way more strategic, deciding whether to handle a consulting project internally or bring in external experts to get the job done. So it's a dilemma that shows up in every industry. In manufacturing, it's whether to build a part in-house or outsource it. In IT, it's whether to develop a tool or license one. But in consulting, the question gets trickier. Because now you're not just buying a product, you're buying thinking, insight, influence, change. And let's be honest, that comes with a whole different level of complexity. So if you ever wondered, can my internal team pull this off? Are consultants really worth the price tag? When does it make sense to outsource and when does it not? Well, you are in the right place. Because we're going to break it all down step by step with a super practical framework you can actually use to make better, faster, and more strategic decisions. Let me explain first why make or buy in consulting is a real dilemma. Or to start with the beginning, why does this decision even matter? I mean, can't we just default to hiring the usual firm? Or hand it off to the internal strategy team and hope for the best? Well, no. Not if you care about value, and not if you want your consulting spend to drive results, not just rack up invoices. Here's the thing. In consulting, the make or buy decision isn't just about cost. It's about capability, credibility, culture, and even confidentiality. Let me give you a real-world example. A client of mine, let's call them Company X, was gearing up for a major cost transformation initiative. Big stakes, big visibility, big pressure from the board. Their first instinct, no, let's just bring in a tier one firm. We don't want to mess this up. But after digging a little deeper, we realized something important. They already had a talented internal team with deep operational knowledge. They just needed structure, some training, and a few external benchmarks to steer them in the right direction. So instead of fully outsourcing, we built a hybrid model. Their internal team owned the delivery, while external consultants supported in a more focused advisory role. The result? They save a ton on fees, their team gained valuable skills, and the initiative landed on time, on budget, and with way more buying. Now, that's not to say you should always go in-house. In fact, in many cases, bringing in external consultant is the smartest and fastest way to create impact. But the point is this, you've got to make that choice consciously. Because if you don't, you're just reacting. And in the world of consulting, reactive decisions are expensive decisions. So what makes this decision so hard? Well, let's look at your two options. Option one, you make, meaning you use your internal resources. Sounds good on paper, right? You already know the company, you've got institutional knowledge, it's free, at least in theory, and you get to build your team's capability in the process. But here's the catch. Internal teams often struggle to break the mold. They're part of the system they're trying to change. And that makes it really hard to challenge assumptions or push uncomfortable truth. Plus, let's face it, when you're juggling day job, it's tough to give a transformation project the full focus it deserves. Option 2, you buy, meaning you're bringing external consultants. They're fast, they're focused, they're unbiased. They can call out the elephant in the room, and they usually come with a toolkit and benchmarks that help you accelerate. But that don't come cheap. And if you're not careful, you can end up with flashy PowerPoints and very little real-world impact. Not to mention the risk of consultant fatigue, especially if they don't truly get your business or your culture. Oh, and let's not forget the confidentiality factor. The truth is, consultants learn from every client engagement. And while that's part of the value they bring, it's also something to watch out for, especially if your project touches on sensitive IP or strategic moves. So, yeah, it's complicated. And that's why we need more than instinct here. We need structure, a way to look at these decisions through a strategic lens, not just gut feel. Which brings me to this. What if we stopped thinking of make or buy as a binary decision and started treating it as a strategic capability, something you can build, refine, and actually get better at all the time? That's exactly what we're going to unpack in the next segment. A 5-pillar framework to help you build a smarter, more robust make or buy strategy. All right, so now that we've set the stage for why the make or buy question is more strategic than it seems, let's talk about how to actually make that decision the smart way. Because no, flipping a coin is not a strategy. What you need is a solid structured approach, and I like to think of it as a 5-pillar framework. These 5 pillars are the foundation for smarter, more confident consulting sourcing decisions. Let's start with the first one, understanding your project. And I mean really understanding it. You'd be surprised how many companies jump straight into drafting RFPs or calling their usual consulting partner without clearly defining what the problem is. It's like saying we need a solution even before even agreeing on what the actual challenge is. That's the fast track to wasted budget and misaligned outcome. So the very first thing you've got to ask yourself is, what are we actually trying to achieve here? Is the scope clear? Do we know what success looks like? And more importantly, is this something we're outsourcing because we genuinely need the expertise or because we just want someone to blame if it goes sideways? Another question that often gets overlooked is the market even ready? Some capabilities are hot and mature with plenty of proven providers. Others, not so much. So if you're trying to buy something that the supplier market hasn't quite figured out how to deliver yet, you're in for a bumpy ride. That's why this first pillar is so essential. If you can't clearly articulate your needs, and if you don't know what the provider landscape looks like, then you're just not ready to make the call, period. The second pillar is all about centralizing your consulting procurement. And yes, I know centralization sounds bureaucratic and maybe even a little scary, especially if you're in a decentralized organization. But here's the thing. When it comes to consulting, centralization doesn't mean red tape. It means clarity and it means control. Too many organizations have consulting projects popping up like mushroom after the rain. You know, one business unit works with this firm, another calls up someone else because they've used them before, and nobody knows really who's doing what and how much is being spent. It's chaos. But when you centralize, even just in terms of visibility and governance, you gain leverage. You can negotiate better rates, avoid duplication, align project with broader strategic goals, and make sure that consulting is actually driving transformation, not just papering over problems. It's the difference between steering the ship and being dragged along behind it. Now let's get into pillar 3, assessing the externalizability of your project. Yes and no, externalizability is a mouthful, but stick with me. Here is what I mean. Not every project can or should be handed off to external consultants. Some projects are clear-cut, you know? You can define the deliverables, set clear timelines, and isolate the work enough that someone outside the company can realistically own it. Perfect candidate for externalization. But then there are those messy, interwoven, deeply political projects. You know the ones. The kind of initiative where progress depends on 15 other teams playing nice, or where half the challenge is navigating internal resistance. You know, throwing consultants into that without a strong internal lead, that's just setting them up to fail, and you with them. So you have to be honest about whether the project is truly something an outsider can handle, or whether it's so embedded in your internal workings that it needs to stay close to home. If it's not externalizable, don't try to force it. You'll end up frustrated, over budget, and no closer to your goals. All right, now let's talk about strategic value, pillar number 4. Because not all projects are created equal. Some projects are clearly strategic. You know, they drive growth, they reduce risk, they unlock new capabilities. And in those cases, spend and quality are critical. But other projects, well, they're more tactical. Or they only become strategic because they unlock something else down the line. That's where the nuance comes in. You've got to ask, what kind of impact are we expecting here? Are we moving the needle in the meaningful way, or are we just cleaning up messes? Is now the right time to do it? Are we doing this because it's urgent, or just because it's politically convenient? And if we do this project, will it build a skill set we need again in the future? Understanding the strategic value of a project helps you prioritize. It helps you figure out whether you should move fast and bring in firepower, or whether you can take your time and build capability internally. And trust me, getting this wrong can have a huge ripple effect on your roadmap. And finally, the 5th pillar, evaluating the value of externalizing. Now, this is where things get interesting, because even if a project can be outsourced, the big question is, should it be? Just because you can buy something doesn't mean it's the smart move. You have to look at the value that externalization will actually bring. Will bringing in consultants accelerate the outcome? Will they offer skills or benchmarks you don't have in-house? Are you just buying validation for a decision you've already made? Also, and this is critical, if the project is something that touches on your core capabilities or sensitive information, because if it does, you might want to think twice before handing it off. Because while consultants bring value, they also carry risk. And if the upside of going external isn't clearly higher than keeping it in-house, you might be better off investing internally. So there you have it, 5 pillars. Understand the project, centralize your approach, assess externalizability, measure strategic value, and weigh the externalization benefits. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what if my project doesn't fall neatly into one bucket or the other? That's a great question. That brings us to one of my favorite strategies, the hybrid model. Here's the thing. The best answer isn't always make or buy. Sometimes it's both. A hybrid execution model can give you the best of both worlds. You might have your internal teams lead the strategy, while external consultants jump in to handle specific work streams like competitive analysis or benchmarking or training. I've seen this work incredibly well, especially when you've got strong internal talent but limited bandwidth, or when you want to upskill your team while still moving quickly. With the right setup, a hybrid model can save money, protect sensitive information, and build internal capability in the process. And here's the underrated bonus. Hybrid models are amazing for knowledge transfer. You people don't just watch from the sidelines while consultants do the work. They're in it. They're learning. So next time a similar challenge comes up, they're not just starting from scratch. They are better equipped, more confident, more capable. That said, and this is important, hybrid models only work when there is clarity. You need to be crystal clear on who's doing what, who's leading, what are the goals, and how progress will be measured. Without that, you risk falling into the worst of both worlds. Confusion, duplication, consultants and internal teams stepping on each other's toes like the nightmare. So if you're going to go hybrid, and in many cases you should, make sure it's intentional, make sure it's well structured, and make sure everyone involved knows exactly where they fit in. Now, we've talked through the 5 pillars of smarter make or buy decisions. The big question becomes, how do you actually put all this into action? Well, the first step, and honestly, one that too many teams skip, is to educate your business lines. Because this isn't just a procurement issue or a strategy department thing. Consulting touches everyone: HR, finance, operations, transformation, everybody. And if you want your make or buy strategy to stick, you've got to get everyone aligned on what it is, why it matters, and how it works. The next step is pretty tactical, but absolutely essential. Inventory your projects. Literally list them out. Then map each one by its strategic value and its externalization value. Think of it like a 2x2 decision matrix. The results can be surprisingly eye-opening. If a project scores high on both strategic importance and the value you'd get from outsourcing, that's a green light. Bringing external experts and go. If it's low on both fronts, let's be honest, maybe it's not worth doing it at all. And if it lands somewhere in the middle, that's where you want to explore hybrid option. The sweet spot when you balance internal knowledge with external horsepower. And finally, implement governance. I know, governance doesn't sound sexy, but without it, your framework's just a theory. Whether you centralize decision-making or keep it scattered, someone has to own the process. Every make or buy solution should follow the same logic, the same lens, and ideally roll up into a coherent view of how you're investing in consulting across the business. Now, before I let you go, let me hit you with one last thought, because here's a provocative truth. Most companies don't actually have a make or buy strategy for consulting. What they have is a habit. They call the same firm they've always used. They assign the project to the same internal teams because they're available. They confuse being comfortable with being effective. And little by little, that comfort zone starts to suck the energy out of transformation. And that's how big ideas stall. That's how initiatives that should move the needle end up sitting on the shelf, or worse, draining resources without creating value. So here's my challenge to you. Don't settle for habit. Build a strategy, ask the tough questions, and use the framework. Treat consulting not as a budget line, but as a strategic lever that you can deploy with purpose. Because this isn't just about saving money. It's about building momentum. It's about moving faster, smarter, and more confidently toward the future you actually want. And hey, if you're not sure where to start, if you want help building your own make or buy strategy, my team and I are always game for a chat. So drop me a note at helene@consultingquest.com. I'd love to hear what you're working on. All right, that's it for this episode of Smart Consulting Sourcing. If you enjoyed it, share it with a colleague, leave a review, or just hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. Bye, happy sourcing, and au revoir.
Thank you for tuning in to Smart Consulting Sourcing, your ultimate guide to mastering the art of utilizing, buying, and managing consulting. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe or leave a review. And if you need more, just connect with us for a free consultation. Let's continue the Smart Consulting Sourcing game together. And before you go, happy sourcing.